capture and sale of Yosef into Egypt, and Perek 39, the elevation of Yosef from a prisoner to the viceroy over the entire land of Egypt, we have a very interesting, a very personal, and by the same token textually problematic account of Yehuda and Tamar. As with many of the details regarding this narrative, the Chumash is silent as to the time frame, and we might have to struggle somewhat in aligning the events of this perek to the maximum of 22 years from the sale of Yosef to the time that he was reunited with Yaakov and Binyamin in Egypt. What we are told is that Yehuda encounters a Bat Ish Kanani whose name was Shua, and eventually marries Bat Shua. Yehuda's marrying a Canaanite daughter would be somewhat problematic, and for this reason Rashi, drawing upon the Medrash Rabbah, translates the term Ish Kanani as a businessman, a merchant, and part of the family tree of Avraham. 3 children are born, Er, Onan, and Shelah. The children grow up. We are not given any time frame, but eventually Yehuda arranges for Er, the oldest son, to marry Tamar. The Chumash is silent as to the family of Tamar, and Er at best would be a teenager when he married Tamar. This on the assumption that the 3 Perakim are in chronological order. Unfortunately, tragedy strikes and Er dies. Tribal custom had it that Tamar should then marry Onan, and he too dies suddenly. Yehuda, fearful of having Tamar marry the 3rd son, Shelah, lest he also die prematurely, sends Tamar back to her family, presumably to wait until Shelah matures into manhood. All of this provides the backdrop to the next segment, the incident involving Tamar and Yehuda, her father-in-law. Pasuk 12 to 23 weaves a fascinating story in which Tamar, concealing her identity, has an intimate one-night stand with her father-in-law and becomes pregnant. The perek ends with the birth of twins, the eldest named Peretz, the youngest of the twins Zarach, and here one can move into some esoteric links, in that Ruth traced her ancestry back to Zarach, whereas David HaMelech, through Shlomo HaMelech, was linked to the family of Peretz. One suggestion for the insertion of this incident between Perek 37 and 39 that deals with Yosef is the messianic undertones embedded into the storyline. For ultimately, while the elevation of Yosef preempted the first exodus and redemption of the nation, the birth of Peretz began the long-term process of the ultimate messianic redemption. This, of course, is hashkafa and speculation. The SICHAH of the Rebbe will focus upon the 4th subsection, that of Tamar's pregnancy. In the 3 pasukim of subsection 4, the story reaches its climax as Yehuda is informed of the fact that Tamar was pregnant. His gut reaction was that she had violated tribal laws prohibiting adultery. The adultery here was that Tamar was still bound to marry the 3rd of Yehuda's 3 sons, Shelah. The consequence of her adultery was that she was to be executed. Hotziyuha, bring her out, Tesaref, and have her burnt at the stake. Tamar, meanwhile, had forewarned the possible threat to her life by sending back the pledges that Yehuda had left with her, namely his signet ring and his staff, claiming Leish asher eile lo anochi hara, I am pregnant, or the father of my child is the one to whom these items belong. Although in Jewish law, Yivum, the option of the widow remaining within the family is open only to her marrying a surviving brother-in-law, not to the father-in-law, it is possible that according to tribal custom at the time, the father-in-law also had the option of marrying the daughter-in-law for either her protection or to conserve family wealth. And were this the case, Tamar would not have been in violation of tribal law. Haker na, please recognize, please identify Lemi hachotemet v'hapatilim v'hamate ha'ele, the owner of the signet ring, the belt, and the staff. Yehuda then acknowledges her innocence, and the charge of adultery is withdrawn. Vayaker Yehuda. Yehuda recognizes that the objects before him were his. Vayomer, and responds, Tzadika mimeni. She is more righteous than I. Possibly in light of the fact that his motives were one of lust. He needed the comfort of a prostitute, whereas her motives were pure. She merely wanted to remain connected to the family of Yehuda. Her actions were justifiable in that they resulted from his refusal to allow her to marry Shelah. Ki al kain. She did this on account of the fact that the law netatiha, I did not permit her to marry Shelah Beni, my youngest son Shelah. The focus of the SICHAH will be the original demand of Yehuda upon discovering that she was pregnant and had violated tribal custom that she should be taken out, Hotziyah, V'tesaref. And Rashi struggles not with the demand that she be executed, but the demand that she be executed painfully, having her burnt at the stake.